Information about the world of running, inspiration to fuel passion and excellence, and ideas for making connections and finding community. You're listening to AtoZrunning. Hi everyone, welcome back to the AtoZrunning podcast where we help runners thrive. I'm Andi.
I'm Zach.
And today on the AtoZrunning podcast, we're talking all about foot health with Dr. Bill Johncock. And we're also going to be diving into the world of running where a few records were set and maybe one that won't be recognized. And we're also going to talk about the Olympics, my favorite topic.
Exciting stuff. So be sure you head first to AtoZrunning.com and look for the word follow so you don't miss this exciting stuff. And then you can subscribe on YouTube if you like videos and things like that.
And podcast.
And get some comments, questions, and all of those things in all the places where people ask and post, comment, and questions and all those things. Like this one from James. Question about Garmin's ability to measure VO2 max. So I know everyone's interest was piqued the moment I said Garmin and VO2 max because we're all so curious. What, if any, reliability or accuracy? Well, first of all, you need to know because you're probably not already familiar. It's not a well-kept secret, but the methodology Garmin uses comes from First Beat. And there's a white paper they published some years ago on this methodology, including the research and some of their experiences going back to how they created this methodology. And we've linked that white paper for you and your reading pleasure on the website. But let me summarize it for you in brief. First of all, knowing that VO2 max is measured requiring blood oxygen saturation and blood pH levels and things like that. And if you can't measure those things, you're not truly getting an accurate VO2 max reading. You're getting an estimation. And that's what they say in the fine print. Even on Garmin's app, it says it's an estimation of VO2 max. And the First Beat white paper gives a margin of error of somewhere in the vicinity of 5% at best and more like 7 to 9% for most of these estimations. That's a substantial margin of error, which automatically suggests that you really shouldn't be looking at that number as gospel for anything, especially not trying to give your fitness measurement estimation something accurate. Okay, it's not accurate. Now, when I look at these kinds of things, of course, as always, I just generally shrug it all off. If it's essentially trying to call it an estimation and it's essentially trying to use heart rate and speed metrics over the course of a run, and I already don't trust the heart rate measurements from anything that I've ever used to measure heart rate, so I don't trust the VO2 max. And if you do want to use that number for anything, just use it as a point of something curious that Garmin's telling you. And that's it.
Okay.
There you go, James.
Well, you might be a little bit more critical than most on it because it can tell you if, your training is going well in general. No?
Only if it's accurate.
Okay.
And it's not.
All right. Well, we're going to be talking about the Mobo board yet again, because the Mobo board is great. And today on the podcast, Bill Johncock talks about the Mobo board.
Unprompted. That was not something we asked him to do, but it just so happens when you're talking about foot health, and Jay DeSherry's Mobo board is one of the flagship foot health utilities
and
that
ankle
you need.
And stability. Absolutely
is. So we've got a code for you to get a discount from moboboard.com, and you should use it because this is the best $76 workout-related equipment you probably can buy.
And that is AtoZrunning 10.
Excellent.
All right, locals, listen up because we have a cool event for you. Westside Stride is putting on their third annual Donut Dash Charity 5K Wednesday, February 16th. It's a free event. It's at 6 p.m. and we encourage people to bring donations as well as gently used or new coats, blankets, boots for the local homeless. And the donations can be dropped off at Swift Printing through the entire month of February. So great cause and a great group.
And punchkis.
Yes, that too.
Lots of them. Mm-hmm. Bonus if you eat as many as possible.
There might be something about raffles in there too. So lots of fun to be had. Let's get to the world of running. So if you've listened at all to the AtoZrunning podcast, you've heard us talking about those blinking lights that go around the track that can help people break records.
Wave light technology.
Wave light technology. Now, last Sunday, Christian Noble, NCAA Division II athlete, ran a time of 13:37 in the 5K, which would be an NCAA Division II record. However, it's not being recognized by the NCAA, although there has been an appeal that it might, it could come through that it is. But currently, as it stands in the NCAA rules, it's not allowed. And they say pacing in races by persons not participating in the same race, by lapped competitors, or those about to be lapped, by competitors of the opposite gender in the same race, or pace setting by any kind of technical device that benefits the field is not allowed.
There you have it.
There you have it.
Well, it's in the rule book, so not going to win that appeal.
Except for that, I have to say that it was last year that wavelight technology was accepted by World Athletics in the USATF rulebook. So it was changed just last year. So it's possible that NCAA could change theirs as well.
I'm shaking my head. I don't think so.
But
I am a cynic and a pessimist. So.
Well, we'll see. We'll keep you updated on the situation. But regardless, congratulations to Christian Noble of Lee University for running that very fast time.
13:37 on an indoor track is no joke. It's good stuff. So in Oregon, where many fast things happen much all the time, there was a new distance medley relay collegiate record set 1 year after they set it previously. The collegiate record by Oregon. And this was Cole Hacker, Louis Peralta, Charlie Hunter, and Cooper Tier running an astounding 9:19.4 in the DMR, which is, by the way, the distance medley combination is a 1,200 meter leg first, and Cole ran that in 2:49. Solid. And then a 400 meter leg by Louis Peralta in 47 and change. And then Charlie ran the 800 meter leg in 1:47, and Cooper rocked the house with a mile leg in 3:54. So that's a 1,600 meter, not a full mile. So astoundingly fast times.
Yeah.
Now, of course, they're reporting it as the collegiate record because that it is their own Oregon collegiate record broken a year later by 5 seconds. So that's solid. They're also reporting it as the world indoor best because it happens to be the fastest DMR time run in an indoor track in the world as well.
That was a little confusing and hard to find, though.
It was a little confusing and hard to find. So they said world best. They did not specify that it was world indoor best because there's an outdoor time that is faster set by a U.S. team back in, I think it was 2015. I don't know the exact year. 2015 World Indoor Relays or World Relays. And essentially they've run a faster time in other circumstances. So it's not the world record, but it is the world best for indoor track.
A little side note that I think is kind of cool about the DMR is that the event is unique because even if you're teammates with people, you might not always be competing with them or in their same training group because you have a 400 meter runner as well as, a 1,600 meter runner, which would be in different training groups. So I think it's a kind of a unique event that brings the team together.
Andy likes making friends, so she thinks that's
fun. I do like
fun.
making friends.
I don't like making friends, so I think it's kind of tedious.
No,
but
he's
still fun.
Being a pessimist and exaggerating a little bit. Well, your Olympic update is here because it's been like this roller coaster through the week. In fact, I think most news outlets were on air saying that the Olympics were canceled.
People were saying, so never listen to the news when they're talking about running stuff. That's just a general rule for runners. Don't listen to general news when they're talking about running stuff.
This is not just running. This is the Olympic Games.
But
this is world news.
My point is, if it's related to running, they're probably reporting it incorrectly. That just seems to be the case across the board. Now, that said, the roller coaster started when there were rumors that Japanese officials were saying that they didn't want to hold the games. No one said they weren't going to do it. They were just basically saying, we don't really like the idea of doing this anymore because it's becoming both costly and very challenging. And then the Olympic Committee kind of weighed in on some of the rumors a bit and essentially confirmed that they were making it was challenging. And then at one point in time, the state of Florida publicly announced that they were willing to host the Olympic Games if, Japan just wanted to say, we don't want to do it. Not really sure if that's a credible announcement or if it was just some state official who said we could do this. But either way, that was fun. And then, of course, Japan has come out and essentially said, no, we're still planning on holding it, but we are at this point assuming we cannot do it with spectators.
Yeah.
Which is the big letdown at the moment.
Right. And I can actually give you a quote, which makes it more authentic, I guess. Thomas Bach, he's part of the the Olympic chief. He is the Olympic chief. He said that they're committed to holding a successful and safe Tokyo Olympics this year and dismissed the cancellation as speculation, but admitted for the first time that fans might not be allowed. So there's nothing certain here, folks, but they are hoping to hold it, and they are committed to making it as safe as possible.
Whatever the case may be, we'll still let you know when we know things that people know.
So the very first of the World Athletics Indoor Tour Gold happened this past weekend in Germany. In fact, as we're recording this, it's going on. Now, there are a few world leading times that happened that we can note. So Kenya, for both the men's and the women's 3,000 meter, went away with the world leading times, and that's Bethwell Bergen of Kenya. He ran 7:34. And what did the women run?
Beatrice Chepkwich ran 8:41, 8:42 if you round up.
And Katharina Trost of Germany, she runs a world leading time in the 1,500 meter in 4:12. So this is going to be going on. A few of these events are going to be happening in gold meetings across the world. So there'll be one in France and Boston and Poland and then Madrid. But the Millrose Games, as many of you know, in New York has been canceled. So that's going to affect some of their scoring and stuff. So that's TBD.
Indoor racing is going to be spotty, but it is happening. It's happening in general capacities all over the place, high school, college, professional as well, but just not as much as it would in the past.
So indoor racing might not be affecting all of us and all of you who are listening, but foot health affects all runners. So we're going to be talking to next in our main topic with Bill Johncock.
Well, naturally, we do not need to convince you that foot health is important, but it's worth noting as a point of context whenever we're talking about these kinds of things. The reason why foot health is so much a point of conversation for runners is because it's, in a sense, it's the first line of defense. But also when you think about things like the ground forces, the gravity forces impact when you're making impact with every stride. You've seen the studies because they're all over the place, and it's been consistent for decades, where essentially you're looking at 2 to 3 times your body weight on that impact every foot, every stride. And so that being the case, you need strong, healthy feet because your feet are taking this brutal load. And if they're doing it well, then they're not doing it alone. They're transferring the impact forces throughout your leg. But if your feet are not operating properly, then they're taking on the majority of those impact forces by themselves. And therein lies the crux of the issue. So that's why we need strong, mobile, flexible, healthy feet, because we need them to do their job so that we stay healthy and strong throughout our runs. Now, that being the case, of course, we are not the experts specifically on podiatry, which is why it was so great for Dr. Bill Johncock, the podiatrist who happens to be a running specialist podiatrist, and that matters, as he will explain himself in the interview. But he's going to talk to us about some things. And before he does, let me just simply preface in content thinking about what are the things that you need to be doing to keep your feet healthy. And it doesn't just have to do with your shoes, but of course that's part of it. It has to do with a lot of different factors, and Bill's going to do a great job of bringing those together here. So be thinking about that when you hear Bill.
So Bill specializes in sports medicine of the foot, and he also is a runner himself. In fact, he's been running for over 40 years, and I do want to share his PRs because they're rather impressive. He's run 2:34 in the marathon, 1:12 in the half, and 15:44 in the 5K. And the coolest thing about his running is that he does it with his family. So his father, there's some backstory there. You're going to have to check out our previous episode with him, but also his son, who he pushes. And they have qualified for the Boston Marathon as a duo team, which is quite incredible. So that's a very exciting, very moving episode, and I'll be sure to link to it. But today we have Bill as a specialist in foot health. We're excited to get to this episode with him because it's very practical and it can help every single one of us. Here's Bill. Welcome, Bill, to the A to Z Running podcast. Yeah, again, we had you on, yes, first as Team Logan, talking about father-son duos, and now as Dr. Johncock. And we are just so excited to talk to you again.
Yeah, it's great to see you guys again. We love it down here in the South, and so we feel bad for you folks up in Michigan, but we're running away here in North Carolina, and we're loving it. And Logan and I are still getting out as much as we can. So Team Logan is still going, just a different hat this time, I guess, for this podcast.
Absolutely. Well, before we get started on the topic of foot health, do you want to tell our audience just the next thing for Team Logan?
Yeah, we're right now been getting ready for the Myrtle Beach Marathon, which is actually on March 6th. So we're very excited about that. We're hoping to run another Boston qualifier. So, but whether we do or we don't, we'll have fun, and that's the biggest priority. But yeah, we're really looking forward to that and getting in some long runs and enjoying ourselves immensely.
Well, we're rooting for you guys. So today our topic is foot health. So as we get started,
sounds exciting, doesn't it?
It is. I mean, our feet take us a long way as runners.
Yes, they do.
So what should runners do for their foot health regularly?
Well, I think one of the things that's pretty overlooked is the necessity for flexibility and strength of the foot. So one of the things that I really emphasize a lot more to my runners specifically is, doing things to, because the foot is the foundation for the rest of the lower extremity and even a lot of the core. If there's not good foot strength and flexibility, your injury likelihood is going to be a lot higher. So one of the things that I recommend to a lot of my patients, I know you guys are familiar with Jay DeSherry. He has a device that he uses called the Mobo board. I don't get any kickbacks from Jay. I've met him a couple times, but I use it myself just to try to strengthen my foot. Definitely been using it more in the last 2 years, year and a half. And so I think that's one of the things is, prehabilitation to prevent injuries is to develop that strength and just the stability there. And then the reverse is also true. I think if we don't have a good core and good flexibility overall, then the feet kind of take a beating from the other side. So it goes the other direction. So definitely the last 2 years, been focusing personally on that, as a 56-year-old runner that's been running since he was 13, my legs and feet have seen a lot of miles and a lot of wear and tear. And so I can't get away with the stuff that I used to when I was in my 20s. So really attempting to focus that. And I find a lot of my runners not only get over their injuries quicker, but also aren't coming back to my office, which might be a problem because, I can't pay the bills. But seriously, we're really trying to keep them out there and on the streets rather than in my office. And so I see a lot of people have a lot better success of not re-injuring themselves when they're dealing with their core exercises. And once again, Jay does a great job with his running rewired stuff, and Jay Johnson's another great one that does it. And, just working with some of those things, and you can just get those things on video. I a lot of times will have my patients, pick up DeSherry's hip routine, and I do that, and I You can just pop it up, and it's a good routine for people to do. It doesn't cost anything. You just have to be, accountable to follow up and do those types of things. But I think I used to get away with a lot of things that I used to in my 20s could get away with, and then the last 3 years before, or maybe 5 years ago, started having more injuries, just lack of flexibility. So I think those two things are really, they kind of feed off each other, the foot strength and flexibility, but also the core. So those are really key issues. I think a lot of people, a tendency I've seen here recently during the pandemic is actually people going barefoot a lot because they're at home. And so because they don't have to go to work, they're not wearing shoes, or they're wearing a, whatever, bedroom slipper or something that's non-supportive. And I've had a big increase in plantar fasciitis and arch pain, and just because people aren't wearing something that's supportive on their foot. So I just say, wear either a good shoe, wear a tennis shoe, wear a running shoe, I love UFOs. I don't know whether you guys are familiar with those, but they're just like a recovery sandal. There's all sorts of recovery sandals. They work great to keep your foot from getting overused, because if you don't have any support at all and you're doing that for extended periods of time, then you're setting yourself up to having more injuries, and so those are just some simple things that I just see frequently here in the office.
So, Bill, I'm curious because you've spoken to and touched on some of these thoughts in a couple of different ways here. So, if you could react to a few things here, there tends to be, I don't even want to necessarily call them schools of thought. They're more like trends of thought with these kinds of things. And so you're well familiar with them, things like the barefoot running trend or the barefoot shoe, the Vibram shoe, like those kinds of things. And then there's also, and these are probably more of some of the older school trends with things like, you don't need to do extra strengthening because you get all the strengthening you need from the running. And some of those kinds of paths that take a more extreme focus on one aspect of these things. So if you could just react to where's the right balance in, like natural motion path and letting our feet move freely versus structure. Where's the right balance in, getting strength from the run, but also needing to supplement that? What is your thought there?
Yeah, I think, of course, barefoot running was huge for a while, and that was a big trend. It was good for my office because I saw a lot of stress fractures and injuries and so forth. And I'm not saying it's necessarily bad. I don't think the concept is bad, but I think anytime that you transition from one activity to another, if you do it too quickly, you're going to have problems. And so I saw way too many people, 55-year-olds, 56-year-olds like myself, that have been using regular shoes all of their life, and they're trying to go barefoot running, and they end up with Achilles tendonitis, or they end up with a metatarsal stress fracture. And one of the realities that we live in is that we don't run across the Serengeti anymore on soft surfaces. We run on asphalt, we run on cement. And so the foot wasn't meant to take that sort of beating when we're looking at that amount of beating. And also, if you're changing things, gradually doing it, hey, I'm gonna add barefoot running on grass on the infield of the track. Maybe that's a better option as far as making some of those transitions to build the intrinsic muscles of the foot and the lower leg to give them strength. But when we go from not doing anything and then start, barefoot running and running ultra marathons, I remember I did a 24-hour run, and there was a guy that was there. It was on asphalt course, and we were running 24 hours, and he was running barefoot, and he had bloody feet and everything else. And I wasn't Bill Johncock podiatrist that day. I was Bill Johncock, runner that day. I'm like, dude, that's just not good. And once again, to say, hey, yeah, that's not necessarily a bad thing, but I think just what you said in the beginning, it's extremes. Whenever we go to extremes, then that's usually too far to one side or the other. And by nature, running, like other events, goes through these pendulum swings. And so we go from barefoot running to now Hoka shoes. And I'm not saying Hokas are bad, because I was wearing Hokas when I was having a knee injury, and they helped with my knee because of the shock absorption that was there. So is it wrong to use Hokas, or is it wrong to run barefoot? Neither one is wrong, but I think, even transition into Hokas for me was a change in my stride and everything else. I had to make sure that I was balancing that. So I think to go to either extreme is usually, wrong. And if you make those extremes, one of the things when you're talking about going barefoot running is that the heel drop is extreme. And so that Achilles is taking a lot more of the pressure, and that if it's not used to that much pressure, and it's already getting a significant amount, if you're running anyway, you make that transition, it puts too much stress on the Achilles, and then you end up with Achilles tendonitis. And so it's just a real problem. And even transitioning, I would say, from, say, a 10 millimeter drop heel to a 2 millimeter drop might be too quick for a lot of people. So I'll say just go gradually, go from a 8 millimeter to a 4 millimeter or 6 millimeter, and gradually drop that down. And so, I think that's transition is a lot of the key, and your body can only take so much. And if it's stressed too much, something's going to go wrong, and you'll end up in my office. So, or someplace, or on the side where you can't run at all, which is even worse.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to make this personal for a second, because I just feel as you're speaking, we just had a conversation, because I'm going to be running on the track, and I have not worn spikes in years. And I'd like hearing you talk about like doing the gradual thing. And we were discussing how it would probably be a lot of strain for me to go from wearing Brooks Ghosts, my trainer, to wearing spikes on a track.
And it should be noted, the only other shoe that she's been racing in the last couple of years are the high stack height carbon shoes.
Yeah, so that I've been wearing the 4%. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So what's your recommendation? Like, what would you do if you were going to get on the track?
Yeah. So what I would say is, hey, as you're training, drop down in the heel height slowly. So, you go from, say, the Brooks Ghost to maybe the Revell, that's a lower heel drop that you would use in regard to transitioning to that, to even lower. You could go to the Hyperion Tempo or something else along that line that's lighter, once again. And that's the other thing that you're dealing with, is you're running faster, okay, on the track than you're used to, and then B, you're also going to more of that drop, so making those transitions. So just like you don't change from running, slow pace all the time to running fast and dropping, 200-meter intervals, you don't go from the Ghost to wearing a pair of track spikes. And there are some other spikes that are out there. Even Brooks makes some, and some of the other shoe companies that have a higher heel that you could probably eventually work yourself to. It's the additional cost that you're kind of looking at too, but that's the other thing. But the cost of that might be less than the cost of going to see your local podiatrist or orthopedist. But I think, hey, start with your Ghost, and then even using that for some of your speed work or tempo work, and then, dropping down to the little bit lower heel height, and then just eventually getting back to that place. And so if you have a long enough time period, that's okay. The other reality just may be you can't wear those spikes because the risk to benefit ratio. Okay, yeah, I was another 2 seconds faster in that race for the 5,000 meters, but now I've got chronic Achilles tendonitis or whatever the issue is, right? I've got a stress fracture or something else that's going on there.
Thank you.
That's
That's helpful.
sound wisdom.
Yeah.
So we're talking about shoes, Bill, and this is definitely something that everyone in our audience is very interested in hearing us talk about. And so I want to continue with the thread a little bit here. You have mentioned heel drop height a number of times. If I'm looking at a change in footwear for any reason whatsoever, what else should I be thinking about as far as something that might be different between the shoes and may or may not be, a good or a bad thing?
Right. Well, I mean, I think you always have to go according to just having a good fit on your foot, just in general. I mean, I know that makes sense, but a lot of people, want to, go the cheap route and go to some instead of going to a shoe store and getting fit, they'll get something that's not fitting them appropriately. So I see a lot of neuromas, pinched nerves in the foot. Well, it's due to the shoe being too narrow. And so you have to think about that as well. Hey, is the shoe too narrow, or is the shoe too wide on the other extreme? Okay, my foot's sliding around, now I'm getting a chronic blister. Can't get rid of that blister. It's inhibiting my training. And so, being fit appropriately with the right shoe. And, I tell folks all the time, it's people ask me, what's the best running shoe? And I say, well, it's kind of like saying, what's the best car? Okay. The VW Bug is really, it's a nice car, but if you're a construction worker, that's probably not what's going to be best for you and your needs. So you kind of, if you're a 280-pound guy that's big and heavy, you're going to need to stick with something that's more supportive. If you're a lighter person and you have a higher arch, then, hey, you're going to probably be able to use a more neutral or cushioned shoe. Whereas if you're flat-footed, significant overpronation, then you're going to have something with more stability or even motion control to go down there. And I know there's been a trend to kind of go away from those terms as far as cushion, stability, motion control, but you can still say, hey, there are definitely shoes that have more stability than shoes that have less stability in regard to what's going on there. So you kind of have to fit it according to what you're doing. I think that's why a good evaluation, you can come to my office and I give shoe lists out continuously as far as from my perspective. But I'll tell folks, I don't have the shoes sitting right here in front of me. I'll say, try these three, see what fits the best for you. Make sure you get fitted right. Make sure, hey, you want that thumbnail width between your longest toe and the end of the shoe so that you're not getting black toenails or ending up with toenail fungus or whatever. Ooh, sounds nasty. But all of those simple things, getting the right fit for the shoe. And so at the shoe stores, if you go to a running shoe store, they're going to be able to fit you appropriately, get you into the right thing. And most of them are very knowledgeable. I think years ago, I've been at this about 30 years. There weren't that many shoe stores, specifically running shoe stores. And so that was a lot more difficult. I'm in a town of 40,000 people, not a huge town. We have our own Fleet Feet store here in town. I can send people over there. I know they're going to treat them well and get them into the right shoes. So I think that's really key to just fitting them appropriately. So getting good experienced people that really know running instead of somebody at the department store that, says this is the pretty color that all the kids are wearing, but have no idea about running and arch height or what's the difference between a motion control shoe and a cushion shoe or anything else.
So it's not the question isn't what's the right shoe, it's what's the right shoe for me. And I appreciate that clarification. If you will, Bill, and I don't know if you have a strong opinion one way or the other, but I'm sure that many are very curious now, your reaction to the carbon shoe craze, the super stiff, super springy, very tall carbon shoes. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think there's some great literature. There's a recent study came out looking at the 10-year, Amby Burfoot wrote a kind of a summary of that. I think here in January, about a 10-year study on what's going on there. It's hard to argue with the results. They are faster. I've actually just recently been using one of the carbon fibers. It feels fast. I'm not opposed to them using. The question of trying to keep a level playing field, I think, is the big key when you're doing that. That's less of a podiatrist opinion as opposed to a runner's opinion and being fair. So, but I think of it, back when I was running track in high school, I know I sound like I'm from the Stone Ages, but I ran on a cinder track. That's what we had at my high school. Well, as opposed to a rubberized track, well, it's not fair to compare the times from my day to the rubberized track. Well, those are completely different, as far as what you're doing there. But that's what's the reality right now. So technology changes our ability to do that. So I think as long as it's a fair playing field, I'm not opposed to doing it. It's going to vary our records as far as, okay, it's hard to say, compare something that's been done 8 years ago or 12 years ago, let's say, versus something that's done with a 4% today or one of the other shoes that's being used. I think as long as it's a level playing field, I think it's fine. I think the majority of people, I don't see a big increase in injuries. I've seen a couple of them. One of my patients had some plantar fasciitis, but I think it was an older gentleman, I say older my age, that made the transition to them too quickly. He hadn't tried them very much at all in his training, went out and did a marathon, ended up with plantar fasciitis. Was it the 4% shoe that he was wearing, or was it, okay, he hadn't been used to doing that much in that type of shoe? It's hard to say how much is due to one versus the other, but I'm not opposed to them. I think anytime that we're looking at technology to improve ourselves, I would love to see more. And that's a really hard question to say, hey, how can we stop injuries? I'd love to say, yeah, let's continue with getting people faster, but how are we looking at preventing injuries too? And that's a really hard thing to really lock in on, because there are so many variables when you're talking about training, when you're talking about different foot structure, when you're talking about age, all of those variables. It's hard to nail that down to say, hey, this shoe really prevented injuries. But I think Nike has even done some work with that. I know Brooks has done. I've talked to a Brooks rep in trying to really zone in on some ideas there in regard to, hey, how can we decrease injuries in people so that they can train safely, so that they can race well. So I think that's a interesting thought for me, as much as getting faster. And I'd like to run 2 or 4% faster. All of us like the idea of running, a little bit faster. But I think as long as it's a level playing field, I'm okay with it.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I guess, Bill, you've talked about a couple of different aspects of this, but I think my last question at the moment is really just thinking about, is there anything else that runners, any of those mistakes or anything else that runners miss? You talked about just not doing enough of the strength and mobility, not being strong enough and flexible enough, but also with the shoe choices, being too dramatic or extreme, or just transitioning too quickly. Anything else that you notice?
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things that happens, I'm on I'm on multiple web pages as far as just following people on Facebook and so forth. I think there becomes sometimes with runners like an antagonism towards physicians, just in general. And so, first of all, I would say, find a good sports podiatrist or sports physician or specialist in whatever area, whether you're talking physical therapists. You can find somebody like Jay DeSherry versus a local physical therapist that has no interest in running, no experience in running. So you're talking two totally different things. And same thing with the podiatrist. I remember what got me into podiatry, I went to see an orthopedist, and he was an overweight 2-pack a day smoker. And he said, well, if it hurts to run, I just stopped running and walked out of the room, and that was the end of our visit. Well, he wasn't going to help me. He had no interest in helping me. But finding somebody, first of all, that has a knowledge about that, but also if you're going to take that time and do that, then actually listen to what they say. So I find where I was going back to web pages, I see a lot of people and I'm not doing what that doctor told me. He told me I needed to take some time off, and I can't take any time off. And I'm like, okay, he didn't tell you that you had to stop running forever. He told you you might be better off. You have a stress fracture in your second metatarsal. It would be good for you to take 6 weeks off. And okay, ask him what other things that you can do to help in that process. So, hey, can I bike? Can I swim? Can I pool run? What things can I do to supplement my cardiovascular fitness? Can I do, core training, other things that I can do in the meantime to kind of help me in the meantime? But then listen to the specialist that you're seeing to actually get the benefit of what you're doing. But most of the time, if you are seeing a runner or seeing somebody that's in sports medicine, their goal is to try to get you better. That's always been my goal, is to try to get people back out there so that I don't see them in the office, I see them out running. And so if he's going to ask you to do something, or she's going to ask you to do something, actually being compliant with what they tell you. And I know that sounds simplistic, but I see just so much on there. Just people are like, I hate that my darn orthopedist or my darn podiatrist or whatever, he's telling me not to do this, or he's saying I need a knee replacement, and I'm going to keep running, and okay, well, you're gonna pay the consequences of doing that. So, I think listening, as long as you're talking to somebody that's really interested in you, listen to what they say. Now, you might want to get a second opinion if you don't agree with them totally, or they're giving you some bad advice. So my last patient of the day today, I have a guy that's with chronic plantar fasciitis. He's tried a lot of different things. But I was using shockwave therapy for him. It's a newer technology, and there are just not a lot of people that have that available. It wasn't available when I was in training, but now I have the availability to use that. Well, I have that. I'm not saying I'm super podiatrist, but I have that, whereas some of the other local podiatrists don't have that. So, finding somebody that's knowledgeable in that area and really wanting to work with you. But once you find that person, listen to that person, I think is one of the big things. So I guess that was a little soapbox answer. I just see that answer a lot on like an antagonism rather than symmetry or synchronism between the two. Hey, let's work together to try to get to this end rather than try to fight against each other. And okay, yeah, I know you told me to only run 2 miles 3 times a week, but I had to get out and do my 20 miler. And well, okay, and then you complain about not getting better.
Mm-hmm.
And that's great advice, Bill, because I can just immediately reflect back on when I coached high school, and how many times a high schooler would say, I want to be fast. And I'd say, okay, here's what you need to do to be fast. And then they wouldn't do it. Right. And then they'd come back and say, I'm not fast. And I'm like, well, you didn't do what I said. Right. So it makes sense.
And I think one of the great things about runners is that we're stubborn. One of the bad things about runners is that we're stubborn. So I have a bonus question. You've already given us such great gold, but I thought of something else. What about the early warning signs? Are there any early warning signs where, like, man, I should go see a podiatrist?
Right. Well, I'll one of the big keys that I tell folks is if you're starting to compensate so that it's causing other problems, then you need to go see somebody about this. Okay. The other thing is, we all get the nagging injuries. I've had Achilles tendonitis since I was 40 years old. I deal with it. I stretch. I do everything. I do okay for a while. I just have to watch the types of speed work that I do. I have to watch my shoes, all of those things. But it's my older body that's gone into that. but if I get to the place where, hey, I'm starting to limp, I'm starting to get that hip pain that's coming because I'm not, my gait is off enough, then I say, okay, well, you're gonna have to take some time off here. You're gonna have it evaluated. And I see, I went yesterday to see my chiropractor because I get some pelvic malalignment. So I don't think that I'm the expert in being a chiropractor. So I get somebody else that knows their stuff to try to help me in getting my pelvic alignment back in line so that I don't have issues there. So I think one is compensation. I think another thing is, if you've had a problem and, it's been probably, 2 or 3 weeks and it's still not getting better and it's progressively getting significantly worse, than seeking some other care. And so, and you find who you trust. There are great physical therapists that are out there that really know their stuff. There's chiropractors that know their stuff. There's orthopedists that know their stuff. So I don't want to say it's all podiatrists that know their stuff, because there are good folks in all of those areas. And I think the other real simple thing that for me, just shoes. Don't stay in a shoe for too long. You got that 300 to 500, mile rule that most of us follow. But if you start getting pain, look at your wear pattern. And I have I keep talking about my own injuries, but I have a left Achilles pain, right knee pain. If my right knee starts bothering me every time, I'm going to go get a new pair of shoes just because of that. And I have shoes. That's another good point, is just shoes in your rotation, to keep different shoes rather than one pair of shoes. I know, Zach, you're going to love this one because you're a shoe guy, I believe. But and so you can rationalize this with Andy. But having different shoes that you're using in your rotation, and I think it actually makes your shoes wear longer as well. So that's another bonus, or at least that's what I tell Mrs. Johncock when I'm going to buy a new pair of shoes. But if you're getting mild tenderness, mild soreness, especially at the beginning of a run, that's less of an issue. If you're getting to, hey, it's progressively getting worse into the run as opposed to getting better during the run, it's probably something that you want to get addressed sooner rather than later. And I guess those are some common things. So.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Excellent.
So my shoe craze has just been fueled that much further.
Well, I've got a few on my list now,
too.
too.
Allow me to be on this podcast again.
It's
you've
actually
got some good ones for me too. So
it's
I'm
a mutual problem.
Shoes.
We just have shoe rooms in our house.
Yeah. There you go. Well, my wife tells me I'm the Imelda Marcos of running shoes. You guys probably don't remember who she was, but she had a whole closets full of shoes when they went into her home, and so she's like, but hey, it's not a good shoe. It's worn out. Well, why do you have so? Okay. So, yes, Mrs. Johncock has the same issue. So
Awesome.
Good.
Well, thank you so much. We've enjoyed talking with you again, and thank you for your expertise, both personally and for our audience.
Yeah. Well, I love doing it. You guys and do such a great job. I mean, and that's for me personally, I think that's one of the things that I don't have you guys at coaches. I had a coach before I even knew you guys, but I have a great coach. But one of the great things that's helped me in the last 2 years is really having the accountability to do some of my flexibility and strengthening things. And he just said, have you been doing your stuff, Bill? And I say, well, not as much. Okay, you got to get back. And so, I'm now the religious 3 times a week that, hey, if I'm paying, I need to listen to him because he's giving me wise counsel. Yeah, and so I love to run. I don't love to stretch. I don't love to do the other things, but doing the other things helps me. So those of you that have Zach and Andy as your coaches, listen to them. And if you don't have them as your coaches, you need to have them as your coaches so they can give you wise counsel in those areas as well. So, but I appreciate you guys.
that.
You do a great job, and I love your podcast when I'm out running too. I have to say. So.
Thank you. Well, we'll
Thank you.
your check's in the mail for those kind words. Kidding.
So.
Thank you, and we'll hopefully be checking in about that March race. So good luck, Team
Okay.
Logan.
Absolutely.
I'll try to send some photos that way on your website. Okay, guys.
Sounds
Definitely.
good.
Okay.
Thanks
Well,
again,
you
Bill.
have a great evening.
Wow, thank you so much to Dr. Bill Johncock for that amazing information about foot health. Super important. In fact, we continued our conversation because I had some personal questions for him, which led us to gaining some more information for you that I'm going to try to give you really quick, like 2 minutes or less. First, pre-run. You want to do something to activate or stretch your feet. Both would be great. Ins, outs, ups, downs are a great way to do that. If you haven't heard of it, I'm going to link to how to do that at AtoZrunning.com. So check that out. Also, the mobile bird, like we mentioned in the beginning of the episode, that's a great way to start getting your body ready to run. And then post-run, you want to stretch after because you're going to have some of that lactic waste in your feet. I don't know if we think about that, but it pools there. Of course, we're going to need to stretch it out and get that flowing to get proper recovery for our feet. And one little note that's kind of like a side note, you don't want to overstretch your Achilles. People tend to do that quite often. And take it easy on the Graston technique. Again, that's scraping. We've talked about it on this podcast. A lot of people will use it to amp up recovery, but you want to be careful because it's pretty tender through all of there. So just do it lightly. That was Bill's recommendation.
And of course, with all of these things, whether you're treating injuries or you're trying to strengthen, mobilize, and address weaknesses and otherwise, and all of these things, there's nuance. And so the kind of injury, and depending on whether it's acute or chronic and all of that, and Bill talked about that, and just how important it is for us to recognize that the solution to the problem is not an easy to identify thing all the time. So I can't just go to Google and assume I can find exactly what I need to address whatever's going on. That's why it's important to seek the experts,
Yes.
like Bill.
Like
And
Bill.
certainly if you have a PT that you like to go see, one of the comments Bill made is the importance of talking to the people who understand running as well. So if you're not sure, it's not a bad idea to seek second opinions either. And certainly you don't have to worry about offending us if you don't trust our opinion alone on these things. That's
trust
why
Bill.
we bring guests like Bill.
Yeah, exactly.
So yes, address the concerns and do so with our feet. We got to take good care. We've got to take good care. So do the things that are necessary to ensure that you're doing just that.
Zach always recommends to make sure you clip your toenails.
You don't want to lose them and have
You
them
don't
rip
want to
off.
lose them. That hurts. So
Change
clipping
your
your
socks
toenails.
regularly. Change your socks regularly because, athletes' foot and stuff is majority from dirty socks and shoes or sweaty socks and shoes for too long.
And Bill had recommended to like getting your shoes fit for you. That's a great way to get started in running because it matters so much. It's the base of everything we do. It's the base of our body. So it's very important stuff.
As is always the case when we are talking on this show. So make sure you head to AtoZrunning.com, look for the word follow, subscribe on YouTube, ring the bell so you can get notified when the good things come your way. And with that, we look forward to talking with you more next time.